speaks about the search for the new Isis, the divine Sophia, and how our task is to unveil Isis in this time, and that if we hold this idea that her grave is the cosmos, when we think about it only through celestial mechanics and what contemporary astronomers are telling us, that as she went about Egypt gathering the body parts of Osiris and taught ceremony to the different communities where the different body parts were, and by that way remembered Osiris, that we could do something similar. This is a lofty goal, but I'm just going to share it, put it out there as an ideal. That if we were to take up in different communities different parts of the artistic element in the calendar of the soul and bring it together every year as this artistic engagement and then republish it. So say that Eastern region did the first quarter and the Central region did the second quarter, but that this would be an ongoing experience of how to artistically engage with the calendar of the soul and work with the mood and see how it fits, because I don't think it's fixed. I think the elements were there, and they just took it all the way through, and perhaps if Rudolf Steiner didn't see it, that there would have been some conversation about the fact that assigning dates is going to get very confusing because it changes every year.
I wonder which group would get which body part.
Yeah.
You don't know who you're working with.
Yeah. I did at one time have it all mapped out. I did. Well, I wanted it.
It makes one wonder whether or not the impulse is strong enough
Yes.
to bring something like this out again, where
Right.
it wouldn't be a facsimile anymore
Yes.
of the 1912 and 13, but it would really be every year a new, because
Like
even
an almanac.
the weeks
Yes.
and the days of the week and these little signs in here for each day and the moon for every year is going to be different.
Every year.
And
It has to be
even-
republished every year.
Even this might not quite match the week of 1912, 1913.
And also, I would
So-
hazard that because we're at the 100th anniversary of this particular calendar, and I'm sure that everybody in this room has heard that the Mayan calendar is ending this year. And I like to say to friends, well, there was another calendar instituted 100 years ago. It's not ending this year. If we wake up in that calendar, then we might find a bridge across this alleged abyss that's in front of us when this other culture's calendar fulfills. I like to say that it's fulfilling, not that it's ending. But a calendar is really a remarkable, it's a remarkable tool. I don't like that word tool, but to think about what we're doing with a calendar. You know, we're not just measuring the days, we're actually trying to be cognizant of the apparent movement of the sun, 1 degree a day. And every culture had a different way of reconciling the fact that there are 360 degrees in a circle, but there are not 360 days in the amount of time it takes for the sun to come back to the place where you started measuring it from. It takes 365 days almost. And in the Mayan culture, they had 3 different calendars. They had a long count, a short count, and a civic calendar. The civic calendar was 360 days, plus 5 extra days that were regarded as dangerous. You did not want to be born during those 5 days. They were regarded as evil. Now, in the Egyptian culture, their calendar, those 5 days were regarded as the time when their great gods and goddesses were born. The story is that Ra was married to the earth goddess Nut. I might have them mixed up. But she was not faithful to him. She got
Jeb.
pregnant.
Jeb. Jeb
yes.
was married to Nut.
Yeah, okay. And he cursed her because she was pregnant, not by him, that she would give birth in no month and in no year in the Egyptian calendar. So it was perpetual pregnancy. But she had another lover in Tehote, and the story is that he was gambling with the moon and won the 72nd part of every day from the moon. And when he had 5 full days together, he put them at the end of the Egyptian calendar, So they belonged to no month and to no year, and she could give birth. So this was in Egyptian culture the way they reconciled this 5-day discrepancy between the number of degrees in a circle and the number of days it takes for the sun to return to its starting point. So in all of these systems, you see this need to adjust, as with this. And every year we are encountering, you could say in every moment, but just for the sake of making it easier to deal with, every year we're dealing with a future place that we have not been. Now this 1/72nd degree of a day belongs to the 1/72nd of the degree that the sun precesses through the zodiac that we talked about last night. This is why the date changes. It's why vernal equinox is now only on March 21st. It used to be the 21st. Now it's only on the 20th. In 2044, it will start happening on the 19th. This is because of precession. The Mayans were measuring precession. The Egyptians were aware of precession. I'm pretty sure Rudolf Steiner was aware of precession. Pope Gregory, they all had to adjust a calendar to accommodate this movement. We are becoming. So through our calendar, we attempt to understand in the space of one life, what is this human life in this movement? So as Margot Rosler describes in the description of these images, at least in the cycle of the year and our movement through the cycle of the year, we can have an encounter with the forces that would help us to build the bodily sheaths for the ego, which is, I think, what our topic is supposed to be right now.
You can transition easily into that.
Yeah.
That's what.
Yeah.
One transition I thought of is because you have these 4 verses in front of you, was to concentrate and share with you a small item here from this little book, Carl Koenig, Carl Koenig, you know, the founder of the whole Camp Hill movement. This is his little book. It's still in print, calendar, but still a commentary. And this was last year at the Goetheanum. They had on display his original watercolor sketches that he did for each verse. And then he did a series of 13 also. Because the 13, dividing the verses up into 4 times 13 was important to him in making for the whole year the cross. He worked with that motif. But he also worked in the first chapter with this notion of the sense of self. Now, you might as well learn a German word. Why not? No, look, we've already learned that. But this is Selbst, which is self, not I, but self, and then Gefühl. Now, in English, it works to say sense of self, with the mindfulness that we're talking here about feeling. So this is a feeling thing, feeling of self, but not self-feeling. This is not some little thing you're doing with yourself. This is not Selbstgefühl, feeling yourself. This is a feeling of self. So it's, again, the wordless through a word. And Carl Koenig felt that this word was worth exploring in a whole chapter in connection with the calendar of the soul. And he points out, and this is certainly correct, in what you have in front of you, that there are only 2 verses that have this word, Selbstgefühl. Throughout the calendar of the soul, you'll find the word Selbst in different contexts, self, but you won't find this combination of Selbstgefühl, feeling of self, except in 2 verses. One of them is the verse you have here, or Michaelmas. See that? Now the Michaelmas verse I mentioned was in connection with that ripe fruit. So that by verse 26, Michaelmas, you have this plump, ripe fruit. All of the ingredients that come from the outside to create this fruit have happened archetypically. Sunshine has come in, inside the seeds, are in there pretty well nascent form. They're ready. And so all the nutrition you need for the seed to be surrounded with once it's in the earth is in place. All the ingredients for baking the cake are there for that perfect seed to finally form. And as I said at the bottom, between 39 and 40, that's when the seed is at its seediness. But to get to that point requires all of the preparation that happens in verse 26. Every verse is a preparation for something that's going to happen later. You're actually, in every verse, you're planting a seed for something that has full fruition a year later. It actually takes a whole, that's another rhythm you can use. What you're planting right this week, the fruit of that may not be until next year. It's fascinating. And then your state of being now, this week, in some ways, was prepared for a year ago by the working of that verse a year ago. The mindfulness of that is what the soul calendar is also asking for. Oh, nature. This is the only verse that addresses nature. Your maternal life. That is everything in nature that's maternal. And here it is, Michaelmas, this powerful Michaelmas mood addresses this. I bear within the essence of my will. Now you can't bear the maternal aspects of the whole dynamic in your will until you put it there. It's not put there that just week at Michaelmas. You've been putting it there ever since last year at Michaelmas. It takes a year to put all of nature into this in essence of my will. So your will has something to do with giving birth. It's the maternal life, isn't it? So the maternal part. So when you contemplate these verses for a week, let these things come into you. Year after year after year. And when you're in the hospital on your deathbed, have this with you. Just ask the nurses, could I have my soul come under me? I mean, really, as long, just gotta keep at it. And my will's fiery energy shall steel my spirit striving. Well, this is all in the future, spirit striving. And where do we get those forces to really strengthen? Here we go. This is steeling it, strengthening it, that sword and that banging of the sword and whatnot of the whole Michaelmas imagery of Michael. Fire here. And then we have that sense of self, Selbstgefühl, springs forth from it to hold me in myself. So you can catch that, ooh, this sense of self is pretty important, because if I'm going to cross the threshold in an initiation, or if I'm going to cross the threshold at death, you will anyway, what's going to keep you together? What is going to hold you on the other side? Because if we cross over unprepared, there isn't anything to hold us, and we're immediately subjected to the forces of Ahriman and Lucifer, who are right there waiting, just on the other side of the door. They're there. And what's neat about this publication is, when you go back to finding the verses at the back of the book, you have to look at another image. And that image is just before you turn the page to start the verses of the calendar of the soul. It's even tinted blue. There's this snake here, holding its tail, and you see this countenance, it looks kind of winged in the middle. You see these two faces on either side. Guess who they are? We'll look at the other side of this sheet in a moment too. Guess who they are? Because you could go either way. But you have to feel their temptations as strongly as any. You're not supposed to just do this to them. Take it in, make it part of your... They have a gift to offer. Lucifer, we get goodies from him. Halloween, we get goodies from Ahriman. We need their gifts. It's just that you can turn these gifts into an ego moment and do it for yourself. So how do you get away from accepting their gifts, transforming them in yourself to make an ego that is selfless? You still need the Selbstgefühl as a shell of preparation. Then you look here, and the snake reappears as the S in Seelenkalender, but just after that snake, and Anthropos at that time saw that snake and said, aha, the tail of the green snake and the beautiful lily. The snake is back. Here he is, or she. But right after that is this little temple motif. There's the roof, 3 columns. Of course, some people say, oh yeah, thinking, feeling, willing, the 3 soul forces. Okay. And then finally the rest of Seelenkalender, the rest of Soul Calendar, artistically done. And then you go to the little introduction, which you'll be getting. Then you go finally into the verses. So there it is in the experience artistically, these images there, before you even start looking at the verse of the week. You're almost forced to look at pictures first. Isn't that cool? And this imagery aspect for our heady, especially me, we need the artists to keep pulling us back from that.
I think I'd like to also enter into this idea that after a year we come back to what we were cultivating, and that Rudolf Steiner suggests that there is a new concept of our planetary system, and it's not that everything is going around the Earth or that everything is going around the sun, but the Earth and the sun are moving around each other, and so that when we come to these crossing points that you've indicated here in this lemniscate, that we are actually coming to the place, say at vernal equinox, where the sun was 6 months ago. And the sun is leaving its forces there for us. That we on the earth are encountering that in this particular space, and that the sun itself is encountering what we have left. It's almost like imagining the earth as it's moving through this space, and what is the substance that we leave in our path? Really, substance that can be recognized and experienced by the sun, if it's not physical substance. I've tried to work with the idea that when we try to do activity or practice or ceremony in harmony with the planets and the stars, even if we don't know what we're doing, not coming out of a preconceived idea, but just a gesture that says, I know that that planet is there, and somehow I'd like to do something that suggests that I know that that leaves a trail of substance, as it were, behind us, that then the sun can illuminate. If we don't do that, then it's just silence. It's the silence that's spoken of in the verse. It's the silence that we experience when we come back to that place a year later, and there's nothing there. We haven't done our work. We've been given the 4 major festivals, but then there are the cross-quarter days, which are halfway in between. And then in the calendar itself, every day, something occurred that was worth acknowledging, so that when we get back to that place a year later, then we can encounter that again in a deepened way. I also like to take another step and suggest that in addition to looking at a one-year rhythm, particularly because it's pronounced in the mood from the Maikayo mood, in the maternal life, that we can look at a 9-month rhythm. So it takes 9 months for the normal gestation of a human being. And that when you move through the major festivals, so it's 9 months from Easter to Christmas, then 9 months from Christmas to Michaelmas, 9 months from Michaelmas to St. John's, then 9 months from St. John back to Easter. And it takes about 3 years to go through that. But this idea of O nature, your eternal life, I bear within the essence of my will. If we go back 9 months prior, so to the Christmas tide and the Holy Nights, then we can also find and experience what was I preparing then?
And that's the secret of the Selbstgefühl, because the only other place it appears is the 9 months. The verse right after Christmas. Isn't that fantastic?
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Now, Koenig didn't know that secret.
Yeah.
He just pointed out where he wasn't aware that the Selbstgefühl is mentioned in the verse after Christmas.
And
So
he's
it's
right.
just, you just pointed that out
So if
without,
without
we
knowing that.
discovered something just right now.
If you turn that page over that has the Aries and Pisces on it and look at the image for Virgo, you'll see that the dates in the zodiac, the way it was included, I think this is coming from the calendar, that it includes the date of Michaelmas, and the image is Virgo, the pregnant virgin. So it really is this, O nature, your maternal life, I bear within the essence of my will.
That's where it
We're
belongs.
carrying it within ourselves.
Oh, my word.
In the traditional glyphs of the zodiac that I showed last night, I tried to suggest this idea that we're carrying something that we received. We are, in the cycle of the year. You can pick up a 9-month rhythm wherever you like. You can say that this is 9 months from something that's going to happen 9 months from now, but this is also the birth of something that was conceived 9 months ago. If you don't keep a journal, it's really hard to keep track of that. But to look back 9 months prior to this date, what is it? What? Just before, just after. Go back.
It must
3
have
months
been.
ahead.
It must have been important what Mary just said, because the page that has Michaelmas on it, it was Sunday, September 29, has only 2 days of the week on this particular page, which is unusual. But here, see the sign that you would have been looking at? Saying what she just said, very good. And then you have this other page labeled October. There's some extra images in the calendar that are not part of the 12 zodiac signs. There are these extra images. October happens to have been awarded one, not every month was. And you complete that week by turning the page even further, and there you have the rest of the week. That's curious. Again, most of the pages have all 7 days, and this one extra special. Wonder what they had for Halloween. Oh, this was Halloween. Well, that's
Libra.
again, it's not a full 7 days. It's Sunday through Thursday. All these things do. Yeah, here's Libra.
So Libra is, that image is meant to represent that we begin to have an experience of perceiving the mineral world. So we've come to the earth, the sun has set, and we can perceive it because the Christ event, the mystery of Golgotha, has happened here on the earth. That's what gives us the capacity to perceive the mineral world. So it still has the dual line, day and night of equal length, that balance with this sun that is setting as we are setting into the earth and awakening a perception of the mineral kingdom. That's what's happening in Libra, in that image. And then the color is changing as we're moving through this cycle. So the way I will work with this is to mark those 9-month periods and look particularly at the equinox and the solstice points for Easter, Michaelmas, St. John's, and Christmas, and see, typically at St. John's there's a dream encounter. What is it, that summer dream, that midsummer dream that is announcing itself at vernal equinox? If I'm conceiving it in the cosmos at St. John, when I'm highest up, and then trying to bring that to the earth and give birth to it, then can I hear? Do I have an audible perception? What do you call that? Is that the right way to say that?
Audible perception.
Yeah.
Well,
I can
Auditory.
hear-
It's not
auditory,
visual.
auditory, that I can hear the Annunciation. So just the vernal equinox is March 20th. The 24th is the Feast of the Annunciation of Gabriel to Mary. The 25th is the Feast of the Archangel Gabriel. So it's all kind of clustered around this time of year.
And that is 9 months before Christmas. Annunciation. It's not. It's unfortunately incorporated into a Christmas card. You think Annunciation was a few days before Christmas, but in the church year, it's really 9 months.
Right, and then also what adds to the confusion is that the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, which occurs in December, is actually the Immaculate Conception of Mary,
Yeah.
not the Immaculate Conception of the Christ child. And that's also because then 9 months after that, in September, you have the Feast of the Birth of the Virgin. So,
There's a knob in the refrigerator to turn off. We won't hear that noise. Sorry.
yes.
I thought that the dates that you have for Libra were the dates for Scorpio.
So we're dealing with two different dating systems for the zodiac. One is referred to as the tropical, which is a fixed division of 360 degrees. Divide that by 12, you get 30 degrees for each sign of the zodiac, and that's typically if you say, I am an Aries, you mean that the sun was in the sign of Aries at the time that you were born. In our day, that no longer has a direct physical relationship to the position of the stars of Aries. Because of the precession, these dates are what's referred to as the sidereal zodiac. S-I-D, it looks like sidereal. S-I-D-E-R-E-A-L. And again, these are difficult dates to fix because they're not equal in their divisions. The constellation of Aries is much smaller, takes up many fewer degrees of the zodiac than the constellation Virgo, which is much larger. And so you have to, again, it takes courage and will to say, all right, I will allow that it's not fixed and it's not equal and it's not tidy. And that I don't know. It's a very, in my experience, a very important part of it, very important empowering ourselves to say, okay, I have these elements that I can use and I have to find it in myself. Am I in Aries right now? What is Aries? So those dates are the sidereal zodiac.
Because the Virgin here is 22
End of August
days
to
plus
October.
12.
It's, I can show you in, I have a book here that shows the picture of the night sky. This is one of my favorite calendars. Unfortunately, the man that publishes this is suffering from macular degeneration. He will only publish one more, and then this will be done. Oh, it's very sad. But let me get to where we can see Virgo. This is called the astronomical calendar, and this is published every year. It takes a lot of work. And this doesn't have any, he's a poet as well as an astronomer, so there's poetry throughout it, but it's mostly scientific information. This is Virgo here. She reclines on the ecliptic, which is the path that's the moon, and the planets seem to follow. It's quite large. Now if she, here's a little mystery in there. If you were to make Virgo move upright in your imagination, and say you were to do it when the moon is full after the vernal equinox, so it's among the stars of Virgo, so she's standing on the moon, the crown of stars, the corona borealis, appears on her head.
Oh, really?
It's something we have to do in our own imagination. The elements are there, but we have to move it in ourselves. We have to have the capacity to see this so that it can become. Willie Super's book is called Changing Countenance of Cosmology. The book I recommended last night, Cycles of Becoming. So we regard these as fixed stars that have been here for ancient amount of time. But that
So we create the apocalyptic image in ourselves of what you
I'm
just said?
suggesting that. The woman clothed with the sun, the moon beneath her feet, and the crown of stars. The crown of stars is the constellation Corona Borealis.